on my way home. Isn't she precious? Have you ever seen a cuter little dolly than this? This isn't a fake doll. This is a real blue-eyed doll. My one and only granddaughter, Madison. She's as precious as they come. I was this age when I was put in jail. I said I'd share the rest of the story. But I wasn't half as cute as Maddie. Hold on. In fact, I was butt ugly. I kid you not, when I show you my baby pictures, you're going to laugh and say, wow, that is one butt ugly child. I was born in Torrance, California, January 14, 1952. Yeah, I'm 67, but who's counting? My mom and dad had met in a Christian college, La Sierra, just outside Loma Linda. My dad wanted to be a doctor. My dad was very, very smart, brilliant, and evil. He is as evil as they come. And I will share more with you why the FBI even has a dossier on my dad. But I'll tell you later what happened. My parents met before I was born. And my mom is full-blooded Mexican. My grandfather is Mexican. My grandmother has Indian, Mexican, French. But she speaks Spanish, and they lived in the Oxnard, Bellflower area when my parents met at La Sierra College. And there was one very famous person there, Morris Vanden, that attended La Sierra College. My dad was very handsome, blue-eyed blonde. My mom was beautiful. She had porcelain skin and jet black hair. And all of her sisters are beautiful and very smart. All of them are very smart, and her brothers were also very smart and millionaires. My grandfather owned the largest dairy in Los Angeles, in Van Nuys. He had over 1,000 cows at the Van Nuys Quality Dairy on Sherman Way. But that was before I was born. My mom told me about the evening that I was conceived. Why a mom would tell their daughter that was beyond me, inappropriate. But my mom always used me as the shoulder to cry on. I was her confidant, her nanny, babysitter, house cleaner. I did everything for my mom. I tried my best to earn her love, but that was never good enough. My mom was a narcissist. My dad was a psychopath and a narcissist with a borderline personality. So they married. They had a big, beautiful wedding in June with all the beautiful flowers and the lace gown. And they had a lot of gifts. My dad married my mom for one reason. She was his meal ticket. Or he thought she would be his meal ticket. Because of the large dairy that my grandparents had. It was in Artesia Boulevard, at the end there by the beach. And I call my father Bob. He was simply nothing more than a biological sperm donor. He hated and he abused me my entire life. In fact, he started hating me when I was 3 months old fetus. My mom was pregnant with me. She was 3 months along when Bob got mad after asking her father for some money so he could attend medical school. He had zero interest in medicine. In fact, anybody with even a sore pimple made him squeamish. And my grandfather wanted to help deliver calves. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want anything to do with the dirty end of milking. There's manure. You wipe You put the cows into their stalls and you hose them down with warmish water, high pressure hoses to clean their back ends off. I think 50 to 60 cows on one side, maybe 100 at a time. And the cows came in and they'd get washed down, and then the automatic milkers would be put on the cows. And all Bob had to do was work. They lived less than a 45-minute drive from the college. There was no reason Bob couldn't work. He didn't want to. My mom told me about the night that I was conceived. They were sleeping there in the dairy on the living room floor. And my mom said that Bob woke her up. Hey, she said, no, Bob, I'll get pregnant. No, I'll be careful. Well, he wasn't careful enough, and I was conceived, and he was one angry man. He was so angry he left my mom. He hitchhiked all the way to Florida from California. That's several thousand miles. I think it's 3,000 or 4,000 miles. He went to join his family in Fort Myers, Florida, where they lived in a trailer park. My dad had 17 brothers and sisters. 5 of them were adopted out, so there was 12 left. And my grandmother had prostituted herself to pay for groceries. She told me this herself. And that's why Bob hated his mom. He hated anybody that seemed like a prostitute or wasn't a virgin. In fact, my dad told me I wasn't good enough. When my sister got married, he says, which one of you are good enough and pure enough to be married in a church in holy mattress moaning? Oh, good night. But, you know, they could have abortions to stay in school and have a big wedding, and that was considered holy. But because I got pregnant when I was 17, I was raped. I was drugged and raped. That's how that happened. But anyway, my mom was alone, and she cried her whole pregnancy. She was upset. She had her sisters, Pearl, Linda, Denise wasn't born yet. And my grandmother begging my mom to adopt me. She wanted me. And my mom left me with my grandma, and my mom took a train and went to Florida. So she thought, wow, she's going to entice Bob to be a family man. So once she got there, she would work, and he wouldn't have to work, and he could play games and gamble and card games with his brothers and not work. And that's exactly what my mom did. And she came back to Florida. She took a train. She came back to Florida with me to get me. And my grandmother was just heartbroken. Beyond heartbroken. I know what that's like because of my granddaughter. I love her more than life itself. So my grandmother was just beyond brokenhearted. And my mom says, well, why don't you have a baby? My grandmother was in her 40s. That's exactly what my grandma did. So Denise, you're alive because of me. So, because my grandma wanted another baby. But that ended up pretty sad too, because my grandmother abandoned Denise. And that's a family trait in my family. My great-grandmother and grandfather abandoned each other. They lived on opposite ends of the house. My great-grandma, Alice Valencia, had a monkey. And that monkey was her baby. She cared more about her monkey than her kids and her husband. And then my grandmother, she also abandoned Denise and her other children. And one was a heroin addict, and he died in a tragic car accident. So I knew my grandmother loved me because she nurtured me, and I was doing really well. When my mom returned from Florida to get me, she took me back to Florida, but that didn't go so well. And Bob wanted me to go back to the dairy to stay with his mom and dad, with her mom and dad. But they didn't have any money for a train ticket. So 2 carloads of the Williams got in their cars and then started heading north. I guess maybe they went to I'm not sure where this happened. They headed to Indiana, and they had to turn around, I think somewhere in Georgia. My mom isn't alive, so I don't know where. I need to contact Bob's family to confirm exactly where this took place. But they ran out of money. They had no gas money, no food money, no money for my diapers, and no money for my formula. My mom had stopped breastfeeding me, and my grandmother was feeding me formula. So here my mom was back east, and she had to wait until her parents sent her some money. They didn't have MoneyGram like they do now. MoneyGram, like grandma. My granddaughter likes MoneyGram. Anyway, so they didn't know what to do. None of the churches were open during the week, and so they were desperate because I was screaming, crying, and I had poopy diapers up the yin-yang, and there was no money, and they were too embarrassed to beg. So they found a policeman, told him their story, that I was hungry, and the police said, "Oh, yeah, we'll keep you." So that's how I spent the night in jail. It was 2 or 3 nights, I don't remember, but it just long enough for the money to arrive from my grandparents from Artesia to back east in the mail. Took 3 or 4 days then. So that's how I ended up spending the night in jail when I was still in diapers. I'll tell you about my time I spent in jail too later on in life. That's another story, and I'm sticking to it. But in the meantime, my mom brought me back to Artesia, and then she went back to Florida to be with Bob. And she thought for sure Bob would love me because I was then 3.5, almost 4 years old, little fat cheeks and talking. And I remember my mom has a picture of me with a little bonnet. She had me all dressed up so Bob would see me and fall in love with his daughter. That didn't go so well, and he kicked at me and just said, "Get her out of here." He hated me. And his mom used to defend me. She'd say, "Bob, if you don't stop it, I'm going to knock your blankety blank head off." My grandma could cuss like a sailor. She had red hair and freckles, and she was a long-haired German woman who is a descendant of Hanging Judge Roy Bean. I've checked this out, and yes, she is a descendant of Hanging Judge Roy Bean. So he's from Texas, and there's roots in Texas. My grandmother was also a twin. She had a sister. They came from Germany, and her last name then was McBean, as was Hanging Judge Roy Bean. His name was McBean too. And they used to drop the MC off when they came through to America. So my mom finally settled down, and they lived in a little trailer park in Fort Myers, Florida. And my Aunt Donna was an hour and a half years younger than me. She was born on January 15, just after midnight. And I was born at 10:51, January 14. But Aunt Donna was born in Tyner, Indiana, and I was born in California, so Donna might be older. I don't know, but I always lorded it over her. I was the oldest, and she better do what I say. We used to fight like animals, but my mom worked nights. My dad was always gone playing cards. My dad never worked. He didn't work for years. So I'm sitting in the trailer and there comes a thunderstorm. Kaboom! And my mom gets under the covers and she's going, oh, Dios mío. My mom was terrified of lightning storms, and here we are living in the lightning storm capital of the world, Florida, Fort Myers, Florida. And then I used to go to the beach with my aunts, my dad's sisters, and Donna and I would run all over the beach, but nobody kidnapped me. I was wondering, why wouldn't anybody kidnap a 3.5, 4-year-old little girl? Well, number one, I was butt ugly, and I'm not kidding you. I had a receding hairline and a big forehead and black skin because I'm half Mexican. The tannin in my elbows would get black. So anytime I'm in the sunshine, and I get freckles, and then my hair gets red. It's really weird. So no one ever kidnapped me. Besides, I had chronic sinus infection, and I had boogers running down my chin. People used to say, go to your mom, go home and have your mom blow your nose. And I'd go, and I'd suck up all those boogers. That grossed people out. So I think that's why I never got kidnapped. But we used to walk all over that beach, and my aunts would tell people we haven't eaten in days, and she would get picnic food and stuff from people, which probably was partway the truth, but not really. But one day my mom, I like crafting. So my mom she worked nights, and I would entertain myself inside a little trailer. It was a little tiny travel trailer with a little sleeping area in the middle, right across from the bathroom, kind of like a little cubby, and that was my bed. And I didn't have anything to do, and I liked crafting, and my mom was sound asleep, and I found her scissors. My mom had fallen asleep with her nurse's stockings on. How uncomfortable. And her shoes and her uniform. So I helped my mom out. I cut her nurse's stockings off. Snip, 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 all the way down, just carefully, because my mom, I didn't want to wake her up. So I cut her nurse's stockings off. I cut the shoelaces off her nurse's shoes. I started cutting her uniform up, but I thought I better not. So I got distracted. I have attention deficit disorder, so I got distracted from cutting her. After I cut her nurse's stockings off, so I gave my mom a haircut. She used to cut my hair. I had my hair cut really short all the time. She goes, oh, your father's going to think you're so pretty. And I used to cry. I didn't want my hair cut, but I was sick of getting my hair pulled. I was always getting my hair pulled. My mom pulled my hair, my dad pulled my hair. And so I didn't want my hair pulled anymore. So I agreed to have my hair cut. So, but I gave my mom a haircut too. Except I scalped her in a few places. I guess that's the Indian in me. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'll tell you about my dead parakeet. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. About my parakeet. And also having fun with the gas burners on the stove. I could have killed my mom. I tried to commit suicide. Here I was 3 years old trying to commit suicide. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.